Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here. Look, today we are tackling a topic that I know might sound a little like dry, dusty accounting at first glance, but I promise you it's anything but. We are demystifying the statement of financial position. And honestly, this isn't just about balancing numbers on a page. This is literally the ultimate tool for business survival. It's like having X-ray vision that tells you if a company is truly healthy or if it's secretly on life support. So let's jump right in.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, the financial snapshot. Second, own, owe, and worth. Third, the balancing act. Fourth, measuring financial health. And finally, we'll put it all to the test with the Acme Builders scenario. We're going to break this whole thing down into totally bite-sized pieces.
Okay, let's dive into this first section, the financial snapshot, time versus a single moment.
So on the left side, we've got the income statement. You can think of the income statement kind of like a movie. It shows the flow of revenue and expenses over a whole period of time, usually an entire year. It basically tells you if you made a profit. But here's the catch. Knowing your profit is super important, obviously, but the income statement completely fails to show what a business is actually worth right now. And that is exactly where the right side comes in. The statement of financial position is like a snapshot. It's a photograph taken on the very last day of the financial year. It freezes time. It shows you the exact value of what a business owns and what it owes at one specific, particular moment.
Moving on to Section 2, Own, Owe, and Worth, Sanchez's personal finances.
Before we get bogged down in corporate jargon, let's look at a totally relatable, everyday example. Meet Sanchez. He wants to start a business, and his financial advisor needs to know how much wealth he actually has. So they sit down and make two lists. Lined up side by side, the math is remarkably intuitive. In the left column, we have everything Sanchez owns, his assets. A house worth $50,000, a car, some savings, and cash in the bank, bringing his total owned to $58,000. Now, in the right column, we see what he owes to lenders, his liabilities. He's got a mortgage, a car loan, and, some money he owes his brother. That all totals $22,500. So he owns $58,000, but he owes $22,500. Take a quick second. Mentally calculate the difference between those two numbers for me.
If you guessed $35,500, you are exactly right. That $35,500 is his net worth, or as we call it in the business world, his equity. It represents the theoretical amount of his very own capital that he could invest in this new business after paying off all his debts. And guess what? Corporate accounting follows this exact same simple principle.
All right, now that we've got the math down, let's transition to the official corporate terminology. First up, we have non-current assets. Basically, these are long-term items of value owned by the business, kept for more than 1 year. We're talking about big physical things, right? Land, factory buildings, machinery. Things that often fall in value or depreciate over time. But keep in mind, they can also be entirely intangible things, stuff like brand names or patents that have immense value but don't physically exist in the real world.
Now, contrast that with current assets. The magic rule you need to remember here is less than 1 year. These are short-term items of value that are constantly moving in and out of the business, rapidly converting into cash. Just think of inventory sitting on shelves, cash in the bank, or accounts receivable. And accounts receivable is just a fancy accounting term for customers who owe the business money right now.
Okay, let's flip over to the owe side of the equation. Non-current liabilities are your long-term debts. The absolute key takeaway here is that the business does not have to repay these within the next 12 months. A classic example, a standard 5-year bank loan. You've got plenty of time to pay this off.
And to wrap up our foundational definitions, we have current liabilities. These are the short-term debts that demand your immediate attention because they absolutely must be repaid within 1 year. This includes things like accounts payable, which is literally just money you owe your suppliers for raw materials, or short-term bank overdrafts.
That brings us to Section 3, the balancing act, the fundamental formula. This right here is the absolute golden rule of the statement of financial position.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how a business funds itself. Look at the full circle here. That represents every single asset a business owns. But listen, a business can't just create assets out of thin air, right? It has to pay for them. And it does this in only two ways, which are the slices of our donut here. It either borrows the money, which gives us our liability slice, or it uses the owner's money, which gives us our shareholders' equity slice.
Because of this strict funding dynamic, we arrive at this master formula. Total assets minus total liabilities will always equal owner's equity. Listen to me on this one. This statement must perfectly balance out every single time you calculate it. If you have $1,000 in assets and $600 in debt, your equity is $400, period. It is literally an unbreakable law of financial physics.
Moving right along to Section 4, Measuring Financial Health, the Liquidity Plot Twist. Now we're really raising the stakes.
We're moving from theory to a literal life or death business application now. Working capital equals current assets minus current liabilities. Guys, working capital is the absolute lifeblood of day-to-day operations. It proves whether a business has the immediate, cold hard cash available to pay its short-term bills. Because if you owe more this month than you have cash coming in this month, it honestly doesn't matter how many giant factories you own, you are in serious trouble.
Let's play financial detective for a second. Take a look at this table comparing two businesses. One does pottery, the other wood carving. KL Co. and HK Co. Now, at first glance, looking at row 1, HK Co. looks incredibly strong, right? They have massive total assets of $190,000 compared to KL Co.'s meager $71,000. On paper, HK Co. is clearly the bigger, wealthier company. But I want you to look closer at rows 2 and 3. Look at their current assets and their current liabilities.
So, if we apply our working capital formula to HK Co., we take $70,000 in current assets minus $70,000 in current liabilities, which equals zero. Zero. Despite having nearly $200,000 in total assets, HK Co. has absolutely zero working capital. Their current assets, like unsold pottery inventory, are completely canceling out their current debts. If tourists don't buy that pottery fast enough, HK Co. is facing a highly risky liquidity crisis. Meanwhile, look at the smaller company, KL Co. They have a positive working capital of $3,000. They are so much more secure.
Now, before we leave the formulas entirely, I just want to briefly introduce one more vital equation, and that's capital employed. This is shareholders' funds plus non-current liabilities. You can think of this as the total long-term, permanent capital that has been pumped into the business to fund all those big long-term non-current assets we talked about earlier.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, the Acme Builder Scenario, testing your knowledge.
Okay, let's look at Acme Builders. They are operating in an environment where the government has just increased interest rates. Now, the directors are aggressively considering buying out a bankrupt competitor for $4 million. To facilitate their moves this year, they actually acquired $6 million in new long-term loans. Those are our non-current liabilities. So you got to ask yourself, why would a business take on massive new long-term liabilities like that? Well, based on what we've just learned, they very likely use that $6 million to fund a massive expansion of their non-current assets. Maybe they're purchasing that competitor's heavy building machinery, buying new land, or expanding their own office premises. The amazing thing here is that the structure of the balance sheet literally lets us read the story of their overall business strategy.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We started off today by talking about the income statement being a movie, and the statement of financial position being a snapshot. The movie might look fantastic, it might show that you made a huge profit over the year, but when we take that snapshot today, we have to ask the hard question. Your business might be profitable on paper, but do you actually have the working capital to survive tomorrow? I want you to keep that in mind the very next time you look at a company's finances. Thank you so much for joining me to demystify this incredible tool and keep learning.